Some things are particularly obscure simply because they never found their proper audience and are then lost to the sands of time, or cater to an incredibly niche group. More often, something is obscure because it's rather boring and people simply do not remember or spread it. Skydancers is the latter, and I could not let this stand! Skydancers 1996 was a 26-episode show made to promote those 90s toys that caused so many injuries the line was discontinued. I watched about half the series, out of order, on 2 times speed, and then read the wiki to fill in all the knowledge gaps I felt I had. The main characters are the top students at a private boarding school dance academy run by Dame Skyla. Jade, Camille, Angelica, Slam, and Breeze Running Bear. Breeze is the only one with a last name. They all specialize in a different type of dance and all come from vastly different cultural and family backgrounds. In the first episode, we learned that secretly, Dame Skyla is also Queen Skyla, Queen of the Wingdom, a magical realm that resides in a hall of music boxes, which is currently in jeopardy from her evil brother-in-law, Skyclone, who her husband sacrificed himself to defeat years and years ago. She recruits these 5 students of hers, who could be anywhere from 17 to 21, to transform into the Sky Dancers, a magical group of defenders who use the power of dance and the spirit of good to protect the Wingdom from the evil plans of Skyclone and any other dark forces that may disrupt the peace. This sounds like a really fun time with some juicy drama baked in, but the timing in the scenes, overall pacing, dialogue writing, and line delivery in this show is bad. And the animation is very stilted, which is an odd choice for a show that features dancing so heavily, to put it lightly. So it all falls incredibly flat. As someone who loves dancing and choreography, loves the idea of this show, and whose special interest is magical girls, I refuse to let it languish in its badness and obscurity. I will invent a better show to enjoy. I figured I could daydream the rest, but I wanted to have concrete images for these revamped versions of the Sky Dancers, hence the speed paint. As I said at the top, each of the characters specializes in a particular style of dance, but what I didn't tell you is that each team has a special power that only they have. Jade can turn invisible, Camille can make cloud constructs, Angelica can manipulate the flow of time on anything she targets, Slam has gravity powers, and Breeze can control the weather. I think everyone except Camille and Breeze need different powers, because not only is there an incredible disparity in the power balancing across this team, all that just isn't cohesive. So, I made this handy-dandy little chart. I let them keep their original dancing styles except for Breeze. See, Breeze is our indigenous character, in case you couldn't tell by his last name and visual coding. They do not specify, dare I say they do not even try to pick, what nation he is from. The only way they describe his style of dance is, quote, a unique Native American style. Now, I am entirely unfamiliar with the various styles and forms and applications of dance in the various Native American cultures, but I'm quite sure that Native American is not a style of dance on its own. Just taking a shot in the dark on that one. So, I decided that his comfort zone is the dances and style of dance that he grew up with, and I'm gonna say that this comfort zone of his shines through very heavily no matter what kind of dancing he's doing in the moment, a la a ballerina trying hip-hop for the first time. There can be like a whole episode where Dame Skyla is trying to teach them how to adapt to and hybridize new styles, and keeps kind of getting on him about this, like, you have very persistent habits, Breeze. You can't hold on to those forever. And what she means is that he needs to versify his methods or he's going to struggle a lot in a professional context. But Breeze kind of internalizes this idea that he has to throw away this really important piece of himself if he wants to be a real dancer. And does he even want to be a real dancer if he has to do that? I'm getting off track. The powers. Since the other half of the title in Sky Dancers is sky, I wanted all of their powers to be related to the sky and the air somehow. I let Camille keep her cloud powers and pulled Breeze's into general air and wind powers because I wanted teamwork and being well choreographed to be a big part of this hypothetical show. Camille can create any structure she wants or provide cloud cover for them all, but if they need those clouds to move, Breeze needs to step in, and if they want those clouds to create a particular weather phenomenon, Jade needs to step in. Jade now has temperature-based powers. This is sort of sky-themed, but mostly came from the incredibly stupid line from the first episode where she, after being magically transported into the Wingdom and getting transformed into a Sky Dancer, cannot unlock her powers because she doesn't know what they are and doesn't believe she has them. And she says, My dad is a scientist. It's a little hard for me to believe in all this magic stuff. What? So because of this, I like the idea that she would have a power that makes a lot of sense to her as someone who grew up in a very earth sciences focused household and only becomes particularly sky themed when in conjunction with everybody else's powers. Angelica gets light powers. I imagine she can use them a lot like how light talent fairies in the Disney Fairies universe use their powers. Then you will notice Slam! The quote I used is actually a more specific reference than "Here comes the rain again, falling on my head like a memory." If you know, you know. I figured I could go a little esoteric with Slam's powers. You know how people would look at the stars as a divination method? Yeah, he has prediction and precognition powers. I imagine he's the last to figure his powers out, and he does it by doing something really cool, like deflecting an attack no one could possibly have seen coming, and then Sky Clone goes, "Curse you, Sky Dancers!" and it's great. Slam's powers are very passive, but over time he's able to see a little further into the future or past if he concentrates. They're finicky powers though, so it's hard to know if he's seeing something that already happened or something that's gonna happen, so he learns not to use that one thoughtlessly. On the subject of Slam, you might notice that he looks incredibly different from the initial version. There's a few reasons for this. So number one, I was displeased by the fact that out of these 5 characters, 2 of them were white with no particularly fleshed out cultural backgrounds, although I guess no one's backgrounds are fleshed out, they're more just there. So, fair, I guess. When clearly, you could have chosen not to do that. And number 2, if you refer back to the chart, Slam's dance specialty is hip-hop and breakdancing. And you don't have to be black to do things like hip-hop dance and rap music. Those are distinct art forms that can be used however they will be used. A white boy specializing in hip-hop dance is not inherently a bad appropriative thing, but I don't like the optics there. Especially with how they wrote him to be the class clown character. I can't help but feel like they're treating a very culturally significant style of dance to the black community like a silly gimmick. Also, I said before, the animation is way too stilted for a show about dance, and they were clearly just goofing off without reference whenever he had to dance. And for a lot of the other dances, now that I think about it, listen, I just decided to feed 2 birds with 1 scone and just make him black. Originally, Camille was the one black character, but I've decided to shift it around so that she's Latina now. Chile Dominique Rican, maybe, if we want to make musical theater references. I actually changed a lot about Slam's personality, too. His primary character traits in the show that exists are impulsive and quippy, and the writing is bad, so the quips always fall flat. Something that struck me about him and his interactions with the team is that he's actually the hardest for everyone else to get along with throughout the show. And I wanted to see what I could do with that, because hard to get along with doesn't always mean tone deaf and a little aggressive/abrasive. Sometimes, hard to get along with is being really unresponsive on purpose. I wanted to make this character that really stuck out like a sore thumb amongst these sociable, talkative dancers that didn't know what to do with himself, and that nobody knew what to do with. He doesn't telegraph his plans or moves very well, so he clashes with his teammates. He doesn't really appear to acknowledge what people are saying until he busts out a level of understanding of what's going on around him that's kind of unsettling, and he very deliberately fades into the background a lot of the time, so everyone kind of gets the sense that he hates having to be here, but doesn't want to be obtrusive about it. It'll be a fun mystery, trying to figure out why he is the way he is, and watching him and the team slowly learn to coordinate and communicate. When I designed their Sky Dancer costumes, I ended up using their powers as little flavor dustings for the usual costumes of their preferred styles of dance. Jade has a ballerina tutu and point shoes with the mist motif and the snowflake earrings. Camille has a really modern-looking dancer costume with the puffy scrunchie and the wispy details that are sort of reminiscent of clouds. And Angelica has her adorable little square dancing outfit and cowboy boots, along with the pretty headpiece holding her giant ponytail back like a cartoon sparkle glint. I actually was having a hard time with the shape of her outfit until I looked up square dancing on Google Images and and found out that apparently people do little get-togethers and competitions about it, like salsa dancing. It's an activity predominantly engaged in by old people, which makes sense because it's not too physically intensive a dance, and it gave me the idea that Angelica was probably raised by her grandparents for whatever reason, and they absolutely spoiled her rotten. She's a very proper, polite Southern belle who's very nice to be around, but nonetheless cannot understand why some of the things she does and says are incredibly inconsiderate, because she's not used to having to consider other people. She's used to being the object of consideration and affection. Slams was the hardest to make a design that felt right for, since hip-hop is usually done in, like, streetwear, but I'm pretty happy with what I got. I like the comets on his wings, and the little divining necklace that his Rite of Flight feather hangs from. Right, everyone has a Rite of Flight feather that allows them to fly, and I match them across all the costumes. I fully forgot to include the wristband from my concept sketch into Slam's illustration, but it's fine. Breeze was a challenge. Because I didn't want to do something stupid and offensive, but I still needed it to look like a dancing costume for a performance, because that's what everyone else was wearing. First and foremost, I needed to pick a tribe for him to be from so I could do some research. I decided to stay firmly in my grew up in Texas comfort zone and picked the Comanche Nation, and thank gosh the Comanche Nation website exists and is as comprehensive as it is. What I was looking for was publicly available depictions and records by Comanche of traditional Comanche dress and how they dress during celebration and performance. I wanted to take those things for Breeze and fuse them together with my admittedly very loose design philosophy thus far. I made his hair way longer and got rid of the bangs because that's not how Comanche men traditionally wear their hair, and Breeze would want to wear his hair in a more traditional way. I took a liberty with what I did with the braids because to make his design jive with the other sky dancers, I needed to pull his hair back into a single braid, and traditionally, Comanche wear their hair in 2 separate braids to each side. So, I turned the hairdo into this winding, twisty double helix thing you see before you. I hope that was alright. I think it looks really cool. The rest of the outfit was, me trying my best. And when I made his wings, I couldn't resist keeping the little thunderbolt on his wing. I love that thunderbolt so much. I know it doesn't fit with his wind powers anymore, but it is one of my favorite shapes. I had to keep it. For everyone's color palettes, I was fully making it up on the fly, which a lot of people will not advise when character designing, but I highly recommend. It was fun. I wanted to pick a palette for Jade that was part cool colors, part warm colors, because temperature. She ended up giving some strong early 2000s Barbie energy, which I love. I made her shoes that red color as a reference to the red shoes, which is one of my favorite stories for actually no reasons, like none at all. I actually imagine Jade has some truly weird tastes in fiction, and the only person who can consistently clock what she will and won't like is Slam. Camille was quite the puzzle for me at first, until I landed on statue colors. So now, Camille has those bronze copper teal colors, a la sculpting her cloud constructs, and also all the evocative shapes you twist into in modern dance. Angelica's colors were a real shot in the dark, but oh, they were my favorite. I also decided to give her the mantle of resident redhead since Slam was a bit preoccupied. As for Breeze, I actually decided to color pick it from the Comanche Nation, crest? Coat of arms, whatever you call this, then supplemented it with a very deliberately neutral beige color so as not to completely overwhelm the eye, because these colors are pretty saturated. I decided it purely because I really, really like primary colors, especially the way they are in this insignia. Yes, it is a little bit like dressing a Canadian character up in a bunch of red maple leaves, but I like the palette, okay? I don't care if it's silly. Slam's colors were last, and the most difficult, because functionally speaking, I'd used every color on everyone else already. How was I gonna give Slam a unique color palette that also jived here? And then, I looked at Slam's visor, and I thought, it simply feels right that this visor be a really cool neon color. And so it was decided that Slam would just be a walking neon bowling alley carpet. One of my favorite things! I knew the moment I decided this that balancing the color palette was going to be a challenge, but I refused to give up, and now look at him! I love him! Now, you may have noticed by now that one of the biggest things I changed about everyone that I haven't brought up as of yet was that they have distinct body types now. I was very much not a fan of the fact that all of the good guys were sculpted specimens with perfect identical doll bodies, girls slim and curvy, boys broad and muscled, while the villain of the show has multiple moments across all of the show where people, including his own dad at one point out and mock his grotesque lazy fatness. Did not like that about the show, not one bit. So I was already coming at this with an angle of, how about I not do that? I also think in this hypothetical show, presumably still meant to sell toys to children, or at the very least, made with children very much in mind, it is very important to build a message that you can engage with dance no matter who you are or what you look like. It's enforced in the cultural diversity of the cast, and now it's enforced in the diversity of their body types. And on the subject of things made for kids, my last talkie video was a thematic analysis angle on the entire FNAF franchise that didn't do so good, and I worked really hard on it, and you should check it out. It was very well received by the people who did. I thought about making Angelica my example fat character, but I ended up landing on Jade because I felt it was most impactful to exemplify that you can choose to excel in any style of dance no matter how you are shaped with a character who does ballet. Historically, one of the most gatekeepy fields of dance. I wanted Jade to be able to pull off incredible feats of ballet and not look like how a ballerina is supposed to look. Admittedly, because ballet is such a physically intensive sport, and Jade is supposed to be the best, most practiced ballerina in the school, I don't actually know if it's possible for her to retain this amount of body fat while doing that, but I'm pretty sure the burning of fat and the gaining of muscle and skill through exercise are actually not as closely related as people pretend they are when they're selling you gym memberships and diet shakes. On the subject of muscle, I decided to give Camille the most defined muscle, and I also wanted her to be really tall, like she is the tallest of all of them. I did this partially because I want to get better at drawing characters with more muscle, but also because I wanted the really imposing figure she cuts to contrast with how soft and light and sparkly she is as a person. It also inadvertently encouraged the statue theming when I was coloring. I think she'd be a really interesting foil to Angelica because Camille is shown in the show that exists to be more insightful, trusting, and empathetic than anyone else on the cast. And I like the idea that Angelica is one of the only people who gets on her nerves with her only child debutante nonsense. And Jade will sometimes have to play mediator if they ever start actually arguing. Camille probably has little nicknames in Spanish for all the other Sky Dancers, and her nickname for Angelica is something like akin to cream puff, and depending on the conversation, it can be affectionate or condescending. I think in the group dynamic, Jade is the strongest voice of reason, but Camille is the strongest voice of comfort, and the Sky Dancers collectively need both. Funnily enough, drawing willowy thin Angelica was actually really far outside of my comfort zone, because I never draw skinny characters, like, ever. Breeze is the resident normal dude proportions member of the cast, very average build and height, someone had to fill the quota. Then, I decided to have some fun with Slam by making him short and really uniquely proportioned. I've seen boys who are, as some would describe it, pear-shaped, and I wanted to draw him that way just because I really, really, really like it. I think it's so cute, and I love when boys are shaped like that. Like, I love when humans come in interesting shapes and sizes. Like, I just love it. This isn't necessarily what I want to close on, but my favorite moment in the entire original show is in, I think, episode 2, where Angelica and some other team members are falling out of the sky because their Rite of Flight feathers got stolen. And Breeze catches Angelica and she says, "Oh, Breeze, I could kiss you right now." And Breeze, without missing a beat, says, "Who's stopping you?" And she has a "you are right" moment, and she kisses him. I loved that! And then they're just in a relationship for the rest of the series, and I love their energy. I'm keeping that in. They're dating. Breeze will listen to her complain and comb her hair, and she helps him with his blind spots. I like it. It's cute. Obviously, a lot of time and work went into this show. Like, look at those backgrounds, but boy, is it less than the sum of its parts. So, I made this. I might make a sequel where I redesign Dame Skyla and the characters connected to her and talk a little more story concepts. I might not. I've made some original English covers of Pretty Cure and Sailor Moon and another speed paint where I redesign a Dungeons & Dragons character as a magical girl if you want more Maho Shoujo. But if you liked hearing me talk about characters and story, I've got 2 videos that did unbelievably well about Hunter Woodabane and MK from Lego Monkey Kid, and once again, that one FNAF video that did less well, which I guess makes sense, but I'm still kind of bummed about it because it's a good video with real, sincere things to say. I've got asks open on Tumblr and a Ko-Fi page where you can chuck a tip at me to see things I've cut from videos and get a handful of cool backgrounds, all for less than it costs to get a bathroom decoration from the dollar store. Or more, if you're ambitious, like Raptorous77, a buddy o' mine who hath donated a whole $3 American to my cause. I'll probably get a proper Patreon set up sometime once my audience is sizable enough, but until then, my musical recommendation for the day is In Transit, Broadway's first ever a cappella musical, and if you don't dance, I say you can. You'll never know if you never try.